guys, welcome back again to another episode on the Blueprint Lounge. I'm your host Cassie, and this is where we have real unfiltered raw conversations. And I probably got all that just all backwards. I've been talking all day today, been busting out all kinds of content, but you guys should know me by now. I'm going to become one of your most favorite coaches, strategists, whatever you want to call it. And I welcome all and any titles you want to give me. But coming through with the final and last episode in this series about rehumanizing hiring. Okay, in this episode, we are going to be jumping into the humanized hiring framework. Okay, in this last episode, I'm just going to come through and talk to you about building that environment, okay? That building that environment that fosters growth instead of fear, okay? And you see this too often. We're seeing it now with, a lot of the federal employees being furloughed and the uncertainty that a lot of companies do not realize that they put employees through, right? And I get it. It's business. Business is business, and that's the excuse that we're always going to use. It's business, right? But when are we going to stop using that as an excuse? Okay? Because there are certain people within your structure, your framework, that are really good, right? And even sometimes borderline great, but they just need that extra nudge, that that mentorship, that coaching that leadership is supposed to be doing, right? That is what most of the time is really needed. And you could take that good employee and make them great, and really having them last a lot longer within your company and building up your reputation as a company, as a place that's sought after, like truly sought after, not made up in my mind, not make believe, not I'm delusional about, certain things when it comes to my company. But, I just wanted to come through on this episode and give you the vision for what hiring could look like. Okay. I wanted to, give you my perspective and my outlook, my outtake on the future of hiring. Isn't about finding the perfect person. It's more about creating the right environment for people to be able to thrive in. Okay. And I want to just kind of introduce you to my humanized hiring process, right? Like I've always said, I think assessments are good. I'm not going to say that they're bad. I do think there are assessments out there that are outdated. I do think assessments are not being utilized properly. So for me, I know when my company gets to that place where I'm going to have employees, for me, if I choose to do an assessment process in the hiring process, I want my assessments to be more scenario-based assessments, over abstract ones. I believe that interviews and assessments should coexist together. It's something that you should utilize together to, develop specific questions and things like that in an in-person interview with the candidate. I really do believe that. I think also it comes to the point where you wouldn't find the hiring process so encompassing. You know what? I'm not even going to try to use big words because my brain is about done. But you'll find that the hiring process could be a lot less stressful if, in fact, you stood there and built an environment that fostered, I can't even talk now, God, fosters growth, right? Instead of fear, or instead of any kind of opposed negativity, things like that. You want to build a company in an environment that has really good culture. And I think a lot of these companies are lacking that. I'm not going to say all of them. A lot that I'm finding tend to be your startups, your mid-range companies, companies that have under, 200 employees. It tends to be those types of companies that I see that struggle to have culture that fosters growth, that fosters, that person wanting to stay, right? Because if you had that, then you wouldn't find yourself going through this process all the time, as far as having to hire. And I think that's why it becomes such a stressful situation, because it's like, oh my God, I gotta hire again and stuff like that. But it's like you guys are never looking at the root problem as to why you're going through this repetitively all the time, right? We need to get rid of that outdated thinking that people are just replaceable. Yeah, I can admit there are some people probably within your organization that does need to go, right? We have them, but that's very far and few if you're doing your job right, if you're building the type of environment correctly, right? I find that it would be true if all those things were aligned, but you going through this hiring process should not always be because you had someone leave or you had to let someone go. Sorry. But for me, I know as I continue to build out my business and everything like that, like I said, once I start really being in that position to hire and have staff, the one thing that I know I want to do as a business owner that has staff underneath of them is to really foster, the type of growth where people can wake up in the morning and not say, oh my gosh, I gotta go into this place today. That's not the type of culture that I would ever press upon anybody. No one should have to have high anxiety. No one should have to, have a meltdown or any of those things, right? Especially job related. And let me tell you, I've had my fair share of crying in the car before work, going through stressful situations, being misunderstood, being misjudged, the frustration of it all. I've been there, done that. And, to say the least, a lot of these places that foster that kind of environment, they never try to change themselves. They always think that replacing someone is the answer. And it's such a big misconception and it's a big problem. And that's why when hiring, it becomes such a huge task, because it's like, dang, I got to go through this again. And it's like, sorry to use this phrase, but duh, you're going to have to if you don't change or hold yourself accountable for why it is these people are leaving, why it is that you may had to have let them go, things of that nature. Like it eliminates a lot of that, especially if we can just learn how to be true, honest human beings that lead with integrity. Because so often do we have companies that have these core values, these mission statements, these, all these taglines and things like that with their company, but no one in leadership follows it, but they press upon the people at that entry level, that bottom level, to follow and adapt. But you can't do it yourself. And this is where I say, like, for me, the future for me in the staff that will, eventually be working for me, I know the type of environment that I want to create. And, knowing that I'm striving highly to start leading that way, even without having the staff underneath of me. It is that old saying where you lead by example. You're going to get out what you put out. And if you as a company or members of leadership cannot see that, then it is going to be a problem for you. You are going to have a problem with being able to navigate the hiring process, or feel like you always are having to keep posting up an ad, hiring people, and going through the training and all this other stuff. Like, you're going to feel like it's a huge task because of everything that you're not really trying to address or fix. And so I say, like, some of this is half them, companies' problems, but, hey, who am I? I'm just someone who's lived in and experienced a lot of these different things that you see that come across LinkedIn. You see it come across these other, social media platforms about, either employees getting on there and talking about how negative the work environment that they work in is, and things like that. You hear other coaches talk about office politics and how you can't outdo or beat office politics, which is true. Like, I'm really starting to learn that. There was a point in time where I just thought that it could be changed. No, it cannot. Office politics, it is what it is. And until it starts from the top down, you're never going to change that. This office politics, and a lot of times office politics are real negative, okay? But you're not going to change that, because here's the thing. We cannot make another human being hold themselves accountable. We cannot do that. We can, help them realize, what goals they claim that they had. We can help them, remember their mission statements, their core values, and things like that. But we can't hold them, accountable. They gotta want to do that themselves. And if members of leadership, if companies are unwilling to do that because they find that, oh, I'm still making money, I got this, and I can just replace, whatever. You know what I mean? If they keep living that kind of culture, then it's never going to be really good for them. And eventually they're always just going to be known as that subpar, that mediocre company. And it's a shame, but I just see that for me, when I do get to hiring people to come work for me, again, I'm gonna say it, the kind of culture and environment that I want to build out and that I want to have, I am hoping will be a dream to that future employee. That they wake up and they're excited about coming in to work. They're excited to come in and work with me, alongside of me. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get too big into my ego and think that I'm better just because I'm a CEO or, I run this business. That's never going to be me, because I'm human enough to say that I started where you were. And I'm human enough to say that, I know how I would want to be treated as a human being, and I'm for damn sure going to make sure someone else receives that same respect level. And like I said, there's always differences in between. Like, you're going to have your rough around the edges. You're going to have those ones that are just bad seeds, and I get that. And you deal with them accordingly, right? But to say that everybody's a problem and things of that nature is just, it's amazing to me the amount of companies that I see, that I hear from their employees, that I've dealt with individually, that a lot of your problems are really from you. And until you get real with yourself, you're never going to get the results that you as a company desire, and then you as a company should really be getting. But again, I invite you guys to comment below, engage in on this conversation. Let me know what your thoughts are, and what would you do? Like, if you were building out your company, or just as an HR professional, and to some of my leadership folks out there, what would change if you built a hiring system that understood people instead of scoring them? How would that be beneficial to you guys? Let me know down below in the comments what your answer is. Engage with me, talk with me. And as I always say, until next time, keep becoming, keep trusting in the process, and just know and remember that your life is your blueprint and build it with intentions. Till next time, guys. Bye.